Heavenly Father, we come to you today in most humble regard. We ask for your blessings upon us, upon this congregation, upon our family, upon those who are not with us today, whether it's due to sickness or travel. We just ask that you will keep us in your tender care in the bosom of your love and just be there to uplift us each and every day throughout this coming week. I ask that you be with our families, that you're with us if we have issues with friends or business associates, if we have financial difficulty or health issues. You know what each of our issues and problems are, what our crisis is in our lives, and we just ask that you will be there to send your spirit into our heart and in our mind and be there so that we can go boldly before you to proclaim this wonderful message of White Christian Revival, and that you retain with us this privilege that we have of serving and worshiping you. We ask this in the holy, precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Everyone be seated. Okay, so we have a few announcements today. First off, if you haven't smelled it, it's not manure on the local fields, it's potluck in the back of the church. So I mention that because this time of year, my husband always complains that there's a local place, they start putting stuff on the field. So we know it's, some sort of process in the I don't know. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know if that's part of the start or the end or just kind of some maintenance. But anyway, it is potluck today, so if you did not know that when you arrived, don't worry, because we always have plenty of food. So please stick around and fellowship with us. And if we don't know each other, sometimes I see people come and they come once or twice, and people are. And I'm actually a shy person myself. Dad's trained us since we were little up to talk in front of people, but naturally I'm a shy person, and it's sometimes it's hard to go to a new place and meet new people and so forth, kind of check each other out, see what person's beliefs and background and stuff like that is. And I always liken this church is kind of like we're a Pauline church, because we're out there bringing a message to a lot of people that are unchurched. And those of us who are churched, and I hope that you understand what I mean by that, I think it's important for us to really make new people who are new to the faith to feel very welcome. And of course, some of our visitors here today, I know you are not new to the faith, so I'm not putting you in that category. But I just want to remind people that when we come here, as Pastor Rob always points out, we come here to worship God, but we also come here to build our community. And so take an extra step, when we come back each Sunday, and make new people feel welcome so they know that this is a church that, while everyone is not welcome, because we don't have race mixers and sodomites at this church, we do have an open arms for our white brothers and sisters who are seeking the truth of God in these terrible times. So I just wanted to point that out. So potluck, stay for potluck. We've got some really good stuff out there. And then also wanted to mention, it's summer again. We haven't put anything on the fields, but the grass is growing. And so it takes a lot of work and effort to keep all the grounds here properly maintained and everything. We want to thank John back there in the midsection for coming out this week and tidying everything up and mowing and so forth. So we really appreciate that. And then I mentioned that Jason and his family, they're on their way back from a vacation to Michigan to kind of see the old farmstead. It's getting ready to pass into other hands, and he just went up there to take the family and kind of reconnect with some of the old timers back there and the old farm and the lumber mill and things like that. And so that was a nice special time for them. And then we also want to thank Brian for coming and playing the piano for us. Hopefully I didn't butcher the songs too much, but it would have been terrible if we didn't have a really good pianist here with us today. So we really do appreciate that. And then also I want to point out that we do have a new issue of the Torch church newsletter in the mail now. And so if you are on our mailing list, you should be getting a copy of that sometime midweek. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you're not on our mailing list, send us an email at revival@southshore.com, and we'll put some information in the mail and tell you about, your covenant relationship with God and what it means for these end times. And I think that's some very important information that people need to have. All right, I believe that's about the end of our announcements, and we're going to have another song. Let's see, what was our other song here? Do you see it, Brian? Revive Us Again. I have doctor's handwriting, so. Revive Us Again, 155, and we're going to take up an offering. Let's see. Patience, would you like to come up and help? And how about you? Okay. And we always have the children come, because this is kind of something that, we do on behalf of future generations to kind of help stabilize their generation with passing generations. So we always do that symbolically. And if you'll go ahead and stand, we're going to have a short prayer, and then we'll turn to 155, Revive Us Again, and we will take up an offering. And there you go. Turn over to... All right, let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we just come to you once again. We are so grateful for this responsibility that you have given to us. It's a privilege, a mighty privilege, to work on behalf of you and this kingdom, and just show how much that we care and that we love you, and how much we appreciate everything that you do for us and for our families, and to help us persevere in these desperate times, so that we can enlarge your kingdom and broadcast the good news of your coming and your death and resurrection and the defeat of evil. We just thank you for everything that you do for us, and all of the ways that you enable us to be a part of your plan. Amen. Okay, 155, Revive Us Again. We'll do all 4 verses. If you'll go ahead and be seated, and we're going to turn to Psalms 113 for a reading. Paul, would you mind coming up and reading this for us, please? Psalms 113, God's mercies are many. And I have my King James here open also, if you'd like to use it. That's going to be Psalms 113, God's mercies are many.
Oh, you got it. I didn't find it yet. Praise ye the Lord. Praise, O ye servants of the Lord. Praise the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. And from the rising of the sun unto the going down of the sun of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. The Lord is high above all nations, and his glory above the heavens. Who is like unto the Lord our God, who dwelleth on high, who humbleth himself to behold the things that are in heaven and in the earth. He raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth the needy out of the dunghill, that he may set him with princes, even with the princes of his people. He maketh the barren woman to keep house, and to be a joyful mother of children. Praise ye the Lord.
Brilliant that you have a flashlight. We don't have these lights up here on because it's been causing some interference with the cameras, and sometimes it's hard to see our notes. All right, we were pleased to have Pastor Rob this morning, and if there's little ones that would like to do Sunday school, we can do that. Our Sunday school teacher, Jason's wife, is also gone today, so if there are little ones, well,
So when do you keep your mouth shut? Well, that's a tough one, isn't it? Used to be a TV program on years ago called Kids Say the Darndest Things, Art Link Letter. And it was kind of humorous. Unless it happens in real life to you, that is not so humorous. Years ago, when I was about 4 years old, we lived in Detroit, and my dad was selling our house, and there had been trouble with the furnace, and he got it repaired. But he did not come to me and said, "Hey, Tom, we got the furnace repaired." So as he's showing the house to a prospective buyer, we're down in the basement. And I say, "But the furnace doesn't work." That was not a pleasant thing. My dad explained that he did get it repaired, but that was the wrong thing to say. And then Muriel has an incident where, when she was a little girl, a neighbor brought her a nice big shiny red apple, and grew on their apple tree and brought it to her as a present. And Muriel, as a child, not understanding people skills, announced to this person, "Uncle Johnny just brought me a big bag of apples." So anyway, we do say things that are sometimes we shouldn't say, and should keep our mouths shut. The two most controversial subjects a person can talk about is religion and politics. And it's not uncommon you'll hear people like, well, I don't think Ann Landers is around anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. People who give social skills and advice to people. It's not uncommon to hear someone say, "When my dad gets here, when my mom gets here, don't talk about politics or religion." The same warning is given for family reunions or maybe social dinners with family. Don't talk about politics or religion. That's taboo. That's off topic. And we know these are warnings are given people because politics and religion are emotional. They're very important to us. Even people who are not involved in politics and religion avoid politics. Or let me rephrase that. Even the people who are involved in politics and religion, who are involved, they themselves avoid talking about politics and religion. And what I mean by that is, a preacher who wants to build a large congregation, he knows that he may offend some of the prospective members if he talks about politics. So never talk about politics for most preachers in church. And likewise, politicians, they know they want to build a big tent of potential voters. You don't talk about religion. So they avoid religion. Politicians avoid religion, and preachers avoid politics for the most part. And those are the rules that everybody understands. And most everybody goes by those rules. And because everybody goes by those rules, that's why when I go into a bank in Harrison, the bank teller never says to me, "Good morning, Mr. Rob. It was sure nice to see you because I'm tired of seeing all these illegal aliens in our country." They never say that. Or the bank teller never says to me, "Hello, Mr. Rob, good to see you. Did you know Joe Biden is an anti-white, anti-American communist?" The teller never says that to me. Never. The teller, and you likewise, always says to me, "Mr. Rob, is it still raining outside?" I think to myself, look out the window. And I want to caution, okay, because there are people in Harrison who listen to this on YouTube. So if you're one of my tellers who are listening to this, I'm not putting you down. I understand the predicament you're in. But the teller always says, "Is it still raining outside?" Or "Did it stop raining outside?" "Is it warming up outside?" "Did it stop warming outside?" "Is it hot outside?" They always say those things. Always. And is it still hot? Is it snowing outside? They ask the same question all day long to everybody who walks into the bank. And the reason they ask that question is because nobody cares. Nobody cares. And the same with the person who carries out, go to Hudson's Grocery in here at town, and sometimes the guy will carry out my groceries. And he never says to me, oh, Mr. Rob, it's good to see you. The last person who carried out groceries was a sick transvestite. They never say that. They always say, boy, it's getting nice outside. And I can't blame them. I can't blame them. I mean, the bank manager would be very upset and not be happy at all if the teller, rather than asking me if it's warm outside or if it's cold outside, he would not be happy at all. The bank president or manager would not be happy at all if the teller would say, hello, Mr. Rob, are aliens still flooding into our country? Are they still taking away our jobs, destroying our communities, ruining our economy, making it unsafe to go to the store at night? So the teller doesn't say that. Or instead, the teller doesn't say, so he says, is it raining? That's safe. Nobody's upset about that. And you know why? Do you know why those are safe things? Because nobody cares about the rain. Nobody cares about the snow. Nobody cares about the weather. But politics and religion are something people care about. Right or left, people will argue and fuss over politics and religion. So they never say those things to somebody coming into the bank. They never ask those questions. Because those politics and religion are important. They get at the very issues of life. And because they are important, people get emotionally involved in that. And every war that has been fought in the history of the world have been fought over politics and religion. Every one. Except for maybe the Trojan War. That's where the Paris of Troy kidnapped the beautiful Helen and took her to the city of Troy. And the Greeks weren't too happy about that, so he started a war against Troy and to win back his love. But every other war fought over politics and religion. I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of the world where one country invaded another country because they didn't like the weather. They invaded because of their politics or religion. So all political campaigns are made up of people from various religions or no religion. Likewise, most religions, I'm talking about Christian religions, are made up of people with various political beliefs. I don't know about alien religions. I don't really care about them. But in Christianity, churches do not talk, for the most part, churches don't want to talk about politics because they're afraid they're going to offend somebody. And then in politics, they don't want to talk about religion. They just want to build a big tent. So here's the general rule. Don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, and don't talk about race also. That's another one. Unless it's to say something positive about non-whites. But for the most part, don't talk politics, don't talk religion, don't talk about race. Talk about the weather. Is it raining outside? Is it snowing outside? Did it stop raining? Is it getting warm? All those silly, silly things they ask people all day long. And I know they're silly, but I go along with the game and answer their question, even though I almost feel like a fool answering their question, because I think to myself, it's a stupid question. Why ask me? Look out the window. Plus, you just asked this person right next to me, because I heard you ask him when he walked up. Anyway, but we do it. Because unlike the weather, politics and religion are important. We get emotional over those things. Now, it doesn't mean that a person can't use common sense, because sometimes it's good to avoid talking about politics or religion. Sometimes it's a good idea. And we'll talk about that. So that's the theme of my message. When and when not to keep your mouth shut. Sometimes we hear something, we see something, we want to say something. When do we say something and when don't we? For example, at work, there's a mystical character. There's a guy named John Smith. John Smith keeps his mouth shut about politics. He keeps his mouth shut about religion, and he keeps his mouth shut about race. Why? Because he doesn't want to get fired. Because if he gets fired, he can't make his house payment, he can't make his car payment, and will have to lower his standard of living until he gets another job. Which sounds reasonable, doesn't it? I mean, let's be honest. Sounds reasonable. Also, we got Sam Jones, who also keeps his mouth shut about politics and religion and race. Why? Same reason. Because he doesn't want to get fired. Because if he gets fired, he can't make his house payment. He can't make his car payment. Will have to lower his standard of living until he gets another job. But there's another reason why Sam keeps his mouth shut. Because Sam knows that he is the engine that moves the message of white Christian revival forward. And through his tithes and contributions and others like him, he knows that is what's necessary to pay the expenses to move the engine forward. So he keeps his mouth shut because he knows that if he gets fired, not only will he lose his job, or can't make a house payment, car payment, and so on, but he can't support the cause of white Christian revival. So we have two people. From the outside, they look the same. They both keep their mouth shut at work. One, however, keeps the mouth shut to keep his job so he can maintain his lifestyle. And the other keeps quiet so he can keep his job, but also so he can continue supporting the message of white Christian revival. You don't have to embroil yourself into every political or religious issue that comes up at work which might affect your job. I'm telling you the way I see it. You may see it differently. I understand that. And there's a lot of ifs and ands and ifs, this and if that we can present. But I'm just telling you how I feel. I know for the most part, people who are attracted to Christian identity and to this racialist movement are independent by nature. It seems to me that people attracted to this message are more independent by nature than the masses of people out there. And they have an independent attitude. And because of that, I run into people make the comment, say, I don't care what people think. I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to say what I think. If they don't like it, tough. I've heard people say that. Is that wise? Always to say what you think? Is it wise? Or is it foolish? It depends, I suppose. Sometimes you hear something, you want to reply, you want to take a stand, but you don't. And sometimes then you might feel guilty. So I should have said something. I should have had more courage. I should have said something, but I didn't. And somebody else might tell you, well, here's what I would have done. Here's what I would have said. Well, it's not his job, it's jeopardy, it's your job. There's no sin in speaking out. It's not necessarily wrong to speak out and defend an issue. But it's not necessarily wrong sometimes to keep quiet. It's not necessarily wrong also. Some people are just created with a more mild nature. Everybody is not created to be bold. Some people are just more mild. And I know people say, well, God can make you bold, and I understand that. But sometimes maybe you're not supposed to be bold. And I know there are all kinds of ifs that you can play into there, if this or if that or so on. I understand that. So it's hard to dissect every single application and say, what about this or what about that or what about this? I understand that. So you just kind of have to take this in general what I'm trying to apply and not pick every single incident out and say, well, what about this? There are some people just with more quiet nature. They still love the cause. It just, God didn't make them to be assertive and bold like maybe somebody else. And sometimes people confuse somebody being bold with self-ego. They're not necessarily bold for righteousness. They just want to prove how tough they are. You have people like that, haven't you? They're not bold for the cause of righteousness. They're just bold because they want to show how tough they are. So don't confuse the self-ego of trying to demonstrate how tough you are. That you're the fastest gun in the West, so to speak. Because there's always going to be somebody bolder than you are, and at what's the point does boldness become foolishness? At some point it does. So let me give you some Bible examples, biblical examples of that. And Sermon on the Mount. Jesus talking to his disciples. Now remember, he's talking to his disciples. He's not talking to the general population. He's talking to his disciples. And what does he tell them? Agree with thine adversary quickly, while thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver you to the officers, and thou be cast into prison. Now what is Jesus telling us here? I don't think Jesus is trying to give some nice platitudes and with little meaning. Jesus is talking to his disciples here. He wasn't giving them some social skills on how to win friends, influence people. What he's saying here is, hey guys, he's not trying to tell people, hey guys, try to be nice to everybody. But what he is saying is, listen guys, you live in desperate times. And we do today. And they did then also. There was a hierarchy of Pharisees who hated Christians. So he's talking to us today, I think. He's saying, listen, guys, you live in desperate times. The enemy has assumed a lot of power. Do whatever it takes to stay out of their courts. Stay out of their courts. Do whatever you can do to stay out of their courts. Now, we're not talking about morals. A friend of mine who passed on years ago, he was, I know, and I don't know how you people are. I don't know. I mean, within the right naturalist, right wing, there's tax protesters. I understand that. But he made a comment one time, which pretty much seems to be true. Everybody who's a tax protester either is going to jail, in jail, or getting out of jail. One of the three, And we narrowly escaped the latter, or all three of them for that matter, ourselves. We live in desperate times. Jesus is saying, stay out of their courts. I don't think this is being cowardly, but using some wisdom. Again, if it's only done for your own personal financial security, then it's for the wrong reason. And it is cowardly. But if it's truly done because your income is used to promote the cause, and you know they'll be in jeopardy if you did not remain silent. So I don't want to split hairs over this. And with every situation it could arise. Everyone it could be different. And it role plays a what if. I don't know. But an example of sometimes important to keep your mouth shut. Each person has to decide for themselves where that line is. And other people can't judge them for the decisions they make. They can't judge them for the decisions they make. Sometimes Christ is saying, sometimes you just need to keep your mouth shut. Just keep your mouth shut. You don't need to show how tough you are. Just keep your mouth shut. We're not talking about moral issues. We're talking about just sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut. I could tell a personal story on that, but I'll skip it today. Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, this is an interesting verse because it appears Jesus is actually telling his disciples to copy a characteristic of our enemies. In the next verse, he tells us that if we are not careful, we'll be hauled up before the courts. Here's the full context. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you to the council, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. So he's warning his disciples. He said, be wise as serpents. He said, beware. But he says, be wise as serpents. When he says that, he's speaking in code. Serpents is a code word, and we should all know for those Jewish Pharisees that he was constantly contending with. I don't think he was talking about snakes. These serpents were the same people that he spoke about in Matthew 3:23-33, where he said, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. Well, like John the Baptist actually said that. How can you escape the damnation of hell? Jesus is counseling his disciples. He's counseling them. He's saying to use some wisdom. You don't need to blurt out your whole agenda to everyone you meet on the street. Remember that line in the movie, if you saw the movie? The movie's called A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson, where Jack Nicholson, while being testified or giving testimony in court, he yells at the prosecutor. He says, you can't handle the truth. And the fact is, there are a lot of people in our country today can't handle the truth. Sometimes people get involved in white nationalism and they want to blurt out everything to everybody. The people, they can't handle it. Just some people can't handle it. They just can't handle the truth. So only tell them what they can handle. Only tell them what they can handle. Don't overload them. And your enemies don't deserve the truth anyway. The Bible tells us that is why Jesus spoke in parables, so the Talmudic Pharisees would not understand what he's talking about. It's like the need to know rule. You've heard that, I'm sure. The enemy has used the need to know rule against us many times. When running for president, Joe Biden said that if he got elected president, he would build back better. And that America would be a great and wonderful place to unify us all together. He didn't tell us what he really meant, did he? He did not tell us that if you elect me as president, I'm going to build a socialist country, a socialist America, and the constitutional liberties will be dissolved. He didn't tell us that, did he? When was the last time you turned on the news and have a newscaster say something to the effect, we're here to confuse your mind because we're promoting the agenda of white genocide? When was the last time a newscaster said that? Or when was the last time a politician said that? They never say that, do they? It's the need to know rule. They're wise as serpents. They need to tell us. They've got an agenda. They don't need to tell you what the agenda is. They're promoting their agenda. He's telling us the same thing. We have an agenda. We don't need to blurt out the agenda to everybody on the street. There's certain people that have receptive ears. We can talk to them further. When Biden and Obama ran for president, they did not say, I hate that old white Christian America. I hate those values, ideals of rugged individualism. I hate the whole premise of a Christian America and all those people who cling to their guns and religion. So if you elect me as president, I will destroy the America you knew and will dump the refuge of the world on the shores of America, and will replace Americans with parasites from the third world. Did they tell you that? They never told us that. But that's their agenda, and that's what they did. Everyone who voted for Biden thought he was going to get rid of the crooks in Washington, D.C. And now, I've said this in the past. I'm saying this somewhat perhaps in jest, but I wish we had some of the crooked politicians back. Seriously. I wish we had some. People say sometimes all politicians in Washington, D.C. are crooks. I wish we had crooked politicians. I wish we had those crooks back, actually. Those old-fashioned crooks that would maybe line their pockets a little bit and, they put put a few extra dollars in the pocket. They might have stuffed their pocket with wads of cash and gave kickbacks. But I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think the old-fashioned crooks, even though they're lining their pockets and stuffing their cash in their pockets, I still think down inside they thought America was a pretty good place and a great place to live. They still loved America, grandma and apple pie. They just love their cash too. And so those old-fashioned crooks, I wish they were back. They don't concern me. I'm not concerned about the crooks. I'm concerned about those traitors who fundamentally want to change America because they fundamentally hate America. Those are the ones that concern me. Crooks don't bother me in Washington, D.C. I wish we had more of those crooks in a sense, if you don't. I'm being somewhat in jest, I know. So I look along for the old days of perhaps when we had crooks in Washington, D.C. But America is not ruled by political crooks, but by a tribe of traitors who subvert our culture, corrupt our values, adulterate our blood. And they do this under the guise of progress and love of humanity. But it is a wise and crafty and cunning con game. It's a con game. It is remarkable how successful they have been. But they have always been remarkably crafty, and that's why Jesus said they will be as wise as serpents. You don't need to spill out your whole agenda or everything you know of the people. It's not necessary. I know there's a lot of people within our movement that I sometimes perhaps a detractor to, who talk about all the, I want to say this properly, because I don't want to misimply what I'm saying, who want to warn people about all the things the government is doing. The government is doing this, the government is doing that, to flying over a plane, dropping chemtrails on us, and all this kind of scary stuff. I understand that. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist. I don't know. But so much of that stuff that people try to talk about makes you look like you're wearing one of those tinfoil caps. Puts you really on the outside of where people listen to you. We don't need to point to conspiracy theories. We don't need to point to those stuff. All we have to do is point to the illegal aliens coming flooding into our country and the cultural change happening to our neighborhoods. That is stuff people can see. They don't need to go to a special website on the internet and read about some secret information that the government is doing here, there, beyond. They can see the flood coming to our country. The last example I want to give here is in 1 Samuel 16, 1 through 5. Or we're going to read 1 through 3, actually. Now, God is talking to Samuel the prophet. And he tells Samuel, I want you to go and anoint David as king. And Saul had been rejected by God. And God was going to make provisions to make David the king of Israel. But Samuel was afraid. He was a prophet of God, but he's afraid. Because he said, agents of Saul, if they know what I'm doing, they question me on why I'm making this travel, they're going to kill me. So God said to Samuel, don't tell them what you're doing. Get a calf and take it with you. And if they inquire what you're doing, tell them you're going to make a sacrifice. But don't tell them your real purpose. Let them think it is about the sacrifice. But it's really about anointing David. So we're going to read that. 1 Samuel 16. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you continue to feel sorry for Saul? I have rejected him as king of Israel. Fill your container with olive oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse, who lives in Bethlehem, because I've chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, if I go, Saul will hear the news and will try to kill me. The Lord said, take a young calf with you. Say, I have come to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice. Then I will tell you what to do. You must point the one I show you. Samuel wasn't going to Bethlehem for a sacrifice, was he? He was going to anoint David, but he made the king's agents believe a lie by deception of a sacrifice. There are two reasons why I'm bringing this up. One, we want people to be courageous. We do. I understand that, and people need to be courageous. But you need to don't need to give the face of everyone who disagrees with you, especially if you're at work. Sometimes I have people call me and say, I got fired because of my racial beliefs. Sometimes that may be a legitimate reason, if they maybe had a bumper sticker in the car and the boss saw it and decided to fire them. But sometimes it's because they got in arguments at work. They got in arguments at work and started fussing with people over identity or fussing with people over race and so forth. And the boss fires them. And I would say probably justifiably so. Keep in mind that when a person is hired as an employee, you are during that time period the property of the employer. Whether you like it or not, you agree to become his property for 8 hours. And your time, an obligation, is to the employer. Keeping silent and not being cowardly. And I think these three examples help demonstrate that it's okay to keep silent. You're at work. After all, this movement can't exist if everybody was unemployed. And people want to argue and fuss at work and then get fired. Now, if somebody is doing so only because they want to protect their lifestyle, that would be wrong. That would be selfish. But they're doing it because they understand that their income also helps support the cause. That's a legitimate reason. Because we're not supported by Wall Street or Madison Avenue or George Soros or the Ford Foundation or the rich guy at the corner. We're not. It's only through the faithful tithe and support of people who love this message and are concerned about the future of our nation and children. So if somebody is quiet at work only because, or in life in general, just give mouth shut because they want to preserve their income and their lifestyle, and that's it, that is being selfish. But they also understand that those things are important, but they also understand that they give towards a cause, that it's very wise to keep mouth shut. But if a person's income does not support this message, and if you're spending more money on entertainment and the pleasures of this world than on the cause of white Christian revival, and therefore you're remaining silent simply because you do not want to lose your job or imagine respect in the community because you belong to the right social circles, then that is wrong. If you wanted to be quiet and not speak out against all that sin and perversion that you see about us and the illegal aliens, all that stuff, simply because you want to keep your jobs, you could buy your big screen TV and a big boat and all that sort of stuff, that is being selfish. That is being selfish. But if a person is keeping quiet because they realize that they don't want to lose their job because they got house payments, car payments, etc. But they also recognize that they support the cause and the movement needs money to move forward. And so we read, the love of money is the root of all evil. So the question, does it matter if you speak out as a witness? Does it matter? That's the issue at stake. There are many important decisions we make in our lives, and here are two of them. Embracing the love of our God. Some people call this being saved or being born again. It is the first commandment that Jesus said we must recognize. Remember the young man came to Jesus, and he asked what the greatest commandment, and Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind. That was a question that the guy said, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus answered him, but he didn't answer him, he didn't maybe give him the answer he wanted. Because he said the second commandment was like unto the first. You can't separate them. You can't separate them. The second commandment, which is like unto the first, and which means is of equal importance. He said to love your neighbor. And we understand from Leviticus that neighbor means your kinsman. Love your kinsman as yourself. He said, you love God. The second commandment is like unto the first. Love your kinsman. Loving your God and loving your people. Now, we have a lot of churches in the world today, Christian churches, you find them on TV, who talk about their love for God. But they have no love for our people. No love for their kinsmen. So, we demonstrate that love by being a servant of God and not being a slave to what is called mammon. Being a servant of God. Love your people. Love your God. Promote his cause. Speak when you have the opportunity. But don't have to get in the face of everybody. It's not your responsibility to change the world. Your responsibility to only be a witness and be a light. That's your responsibility. Jesus said, you're the light of the world. And like I explained before, the light is the most powerful force there is, because nobody comes into a room and turns on darkness. They only turn on light. You leave a room and turn off the light. You don't turn off darkness. You don't turn on darkness. You either turn on light, you turn off light. And we're in this terrible condition in America today, not because evil is growing powerful, but because light has grown weak. Jesus said, no man, I believe it might have on the screen, can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. We understand that an income is valuable and necessary. We understand that. But if we remain silent in our testimony and witness for the one and only purpose of keeping a job, then we are serving mammon. If we're keeping silent because we just want to keep our job, then we're serving mammon, because that money is very important in my life and my lifestyle and my social status in the community. But if we understand the principles I'm trying to illustrate here, and we remain silent because we also know that we need the income, and we can use the income to pay our house payment, a car payment, but also we understand in our gut that we need this income to help support the cause of white Christian revival, then you're also serving God. So in review, Christ said to agree with your adversary. I don't think he means to agree with sin or deny your faith. I do not think that's what he's saying. But I do think he means don't be an antagonist. Don't go out trying to create trouble. Stay mellow and focus on the message of white Christian revival. You need your job. Use your job. Use your influence. And use your income to spread the good news of white Christian revival. Because remember, the purpose of your job and income is not just to buy a big screen TV or buy a fast fishing boat, but also because it can be a tool to help provide the engine to take the message to our people. Christ said, be wise as serpents. You can be cunning and you can be crafty. You can work in that job and keep silent. Hold your tongue and be earning money to be a tool to reach out to our people. Don't sacrifice the necessary ties and contributions that this message needs just because you want to be a bullhead and shoot your mouth off and get fired. That would be pretty foolish. 3, the example of Samuel means you don't have to tell everything. Remember, Samuel lied. Let's face it, he lied. And he deceived the king's agents so he could continue his mission. Sometimes you may have to lie to continue the mission. I know you're not supposed to lie, so you have to understand what I'm saying. It doesn't mean you're a liar. But when you're talking about the evil agents of those who want to destroy us and destroy our heritage and culture and everything we love and hold dear, you owe them no obligation at all. None. We're at a war for racial survival. This mission is important. We live in desperate times. I wish I could stand up here and have a smiley face and say, it's no big deal. Sit back, relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Everything's going to be okay. Now, you might say that to a child waking up in the middle of the night with a nightmare. You might pat him on the head and say, "Don't go back to sleep. Everything's going to be okay." But we cannot tell our people, "Go back to sleep. Everything's going to be okay." Because everything's not going to be okay. I read on the internet, I think it was in Wikipedia, says that of all racial groups, only white people are projected to be are facing absolute decline in numbers. Here's what it says on Wikipedia. These groups and their governments will be looking for elbow room, talking about third world countries, and the diminishing presence of whites in Europe, and especially in the relatively wide open spaces of North America, provides such an opportunity, especially countries like Canada, the United States, Argentina, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, and Russia can expect to be pressured to accept collectively hundreds of millions of refugees from India and sub-Saharan Africa. In other words, your white countries are going to be pressured to accept these third world people. And we see it happening today. Now, I know many people hearing this will be willing, because we do play it on YouTube, will be willing to submit. They'll throw their arms up and say, "What's the use?" And perhaps be willing to jump over the edge. There's always been people like that. There's always been people who be willing to submit to tyranny. Thomas Jefferson talks about that in the Declaration of Independence. He said mankind is more disposed to suffer as long as evils are sufferable, to change the forms to which they have become accustomed. So he said there's always been people who are willing to bow. It's always been like that. And the heroes of the past, the heroes that have gone on before us, heroes who have overcome, we read about in the 5th chapter of Romans, not Romans, you have to forgive me on that. Hebrews, thank you. They overcome loneliness and despair and misery. You can read heroes of our past who overcome all those things. But were driven by their faith, and through their faith, sacrificing greed and selfishness and worldly pleasure, by their faith, endured all those hardships, and it reached down to us today, metaphorically speaking. All those heroes of our past who withstood all those things, metaphorically, they're reaching down their hands to us today. They're reaching down their hands to us, and they're asking us just to grasp their hands. Grasp their hands. Because it's in these moments when we see the world decaying and we become angry and upset about it and we want to say something and sometimes we can't. We just have to hold ourselves because we know that we live in this desperate situation, desperate country, and yet we got to keep focused on what's right. We got to keep focused on that. And we can't allow that to waver us away. And so we keep those jobs, not because we love the job, not because we love the big screen TV, not because we love the bass fishing boats, but we keep those jobs because we love white Christian revival and we want them to go forward because our children are going to suffer the consequences of what we do or we don't do. And it's in those moments, in despair, when new heroes are born. New heroes are born. And so I'm going to close with the passage we read in Revelations. The Bible confirms that in that dark hour, the saints of God will overcome the rebellion. They'll overcome the rebellion by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They'll overcome the rebellion. We look for some supernatural power. The supernatural power is in us. The blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And the scripture said they love not their lives unto death. It's a word of prayer. Our Father, we pray that you will help us remain strong. Help us be wise as serpents. Help us to understand how cunning the enemy is. Help us to understand that we too can have the power to take a message to our people. Help us to be strong and courageous. Help us be bold, but help us also be wise. We ask you this in your name.
Like these, I have a Savior. In times like these, I have an anchor. I'm very sure. I'm very sure. My anchor holds and grips the solid rock. This rock is Jesus. Yes, he's the one. This rock is Jesus, the only one. Be very sure. Be very